Well, welcome into a very exciting episode of The Scene. I am your host, Bubba Starts, and with me today is singer-songwriter Jeremy Zeller. Welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, we know your name. Let's find out what you're all about. Why don't you go ahead and give us a little backstory, and we'll see where our paths overlap.
Right on. Well, I'll open up by saying I have no idea what we're walking into here. So it's awesome to meet you, Bubba. I look forward to a great conversation. My name is Jeremy Zeller. I'm from Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. I'm a singer-songwriter that tours the world telling my story of basically death to life. I have many topics in my story that manifest themselves into the songs that I write. And each one of my songs is a journal entry in and of itself, a journal entry or a prayer. I'm a very spiritual man, so I've walked closely with the Lord since I was 6 years old. Uh, had my own hero's journey in the middle of it that dealt with addiction and divorce and a blended family, and ended up finding out I was autistic as an adult. And Now I use all of it to tell my own story. I believe in the power of an authentic story, and I think that more people need to hear them. It gives other people permission to evaluate their own story and, at the very least, be able to learn from somebody else's mistakes. And so, yeah, I try to use every gift that I've been given to glorify God with it. And music is the language that I hear Him most clearly in. So that seems to be what I do.
And that's exactly why God has brought us together today.
Well, all
Jeremy,
right.
my
That's
story,
great.
my story is very much the same. I'm a songwriter myself. I would categorize my songs in much the same way. The songs I write are deeply personal. They've gotten me through something, or the story of where I come from. A lot of tear-soaked pages over the years as these things are coming out, or big smiles as we relive the joys of our lives. Right? Amazing backstory. I myself am from South Dakota, so an extremely rural area as well. I have always, music has always been, at least until now, how I've communicated with the world. And in the last year, I have found podcasting, and it started out as just supporting artists and talking to my friends. And in about the last 2 months, I realized that this is actually how God is speaking through us, our sharing of our stories with each other, right? In conversation, but then on the global scale of having these things go out to the whole world. And I always say that if there's one life changed per conversation and that one life is mine, well, then we have succeeded. And every single one, much as today, I'm sure, will change my life, that every single one has been that. So, welcome into the show and to, the community that we're building here, the Scene Projects. And welcome to this much greater, podcasting community. I found you through, you kind of putting it out there that you were looking to be a guest. And I was just pleased. Reading very little of your story and your one sheet, as it were, was like, I think we're gonna have a great convo, and I couldn't wait.
Nice.
And I'm glad we didn't drag our feet on it. We just met online just a few days ago, and now here
That's
for the
right.
first time. So incredible.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And again, I think, like you said, I think God has brought this thing together. I did throw something out there. I've got a couple songs that I'm trying to push. So yeah, I think the best way for me to connect with my audience is to throw myself out there and see who even wants to listen. So so that's where I'm starting, man. I uh I was I've been a professional musician in one way or in another for 25 years now. And so I'm trying to take that experience that I had with working with bands. Most of my work was with bands or with churches. And so coming out on the other side of that, what I'm doing now is a very personal journey. I peeled myself back for about a year and a half and didn't, I stayed in a cave for about a year and a half, no talking to anybody, just me, myself, a mat on the floor, a bowl, and a towel, and some water off to the side. But it was what I needed to do to come to terms with where I was at in my own story. I was also losing my dad at the time, who was my best friend. So, there was just a mountain of anxieties waiting for me if I wanted to pick them up. And I decided to just kind of lay down and understand that my laying down was meant to be. It was God making me lay down in the green pastures. He makes me lay down. It's not a suggestion. So, and when I needed to lay down, I always, I was a pastor. So I thought my own sabbaticals was laying down for a time. And I thought that my morning prayer routines was sufficient for where I was at, and it wasn't. It required some really deep work in myself. A lot of people will call it shadow work. I just call it prayer. And I really had to take myself through my own story, which for me, that's the gift that my autism therapy gave me, was as I began to explore my brain and figure out why I thought the way that I thought, and why emotionally, I handled things differently than most people do, or, why I was so good at masking to get myself through a situation of survival sometimes. And being able to walk myself through all of that and find, for me, on the other side of it, was the foundational teachings that I had always applied to myself as even a young man, even those teachings that I did have to think through as a kid. Do they make sense? Those have brought me through life. And my own problem and my own uh, religious trauma comes from the times that I allowed the expectations of others to supersede the expectations that I had gotten from God, whether it be treating somebody in a way that they shouldn't be, whether it is, having redemption on your own timeline instead of just understanding that when somebody is redeemed by Jesus, they're redeemed by the teachings of Christ, and it's over. There is no redemption process. We are to treat them as authentically as, who are you in the now? Who are you right this moment? I don't care who you were in the past, but God gives us all these moments, if we choose to take them, to define that portion of our life, with either a lamppost with a light on it saying, hey, check it out, this got me here. Or a lot of people will put it under a bush and they'll try to hide it off the path so that nobody knows this part of me that I had to deal with and who I had to become to be that and survive. I don't ever want anybody to know that. And I think the exact opposite. I think, if you'll do the work, and if you'll walk yourself back through your path, you'll see all these beautiful little bushes that are hiding this awesome story of pain and struggle. But on the other side of that, you own the power to that. Where ultimately, what did it create in you? What did it turn you into? And here you are right now. You're saying, no, I think there's something to what Jesus said. There is something about me being a child of God. There is something about finding the beauty of heaven within myself. And there is something about being able to follow his path and walk backwards on it if I need to, and understand that the light posts that I left myself, I did leave them under a bush, but they're there. I just got to whack the weeds down for a minute and let that story shine, let that part of my story shine, because that means there's a whole group of people that I can connect with now that I was afraid to even talk to before. And that is you taking your power back. And once people understand the value of that in your story, that's when you're literally walking people back down that path to find that lamppost that they left under the bush, by showing them how you got there and back, to say, hey, I made it there, and I made it back too. It's a tough journey, but I promise you it's safe, and there's nothing but the goodness of God laying underneath of that right now. It's just, you got to go get it. We all have to go get it. And nobody else can get it for us. Nobody else has lived our story with us except God. That is where my relationship with God comes in handy. Anytime that I ever have a question about, what was that? Well, at the end of the day, me and God are the only two that walked on that particular path on that particular day at that particular time. He's the only one I trust in that way. But the beautiful thing is when you walk in that way, because I cut everybody out of my life for about a year and a half. The beautiful thing is as you reemerge from that journey, you've done the work and you know what kind of relationships are willing to walk with you, or you with them. So I don't even know where that came from, but that's
And that's exactly why I say what I say on this show. Opening up, being vulnerable, it's changed my life. Like I said, this show kind of started as me with my musician friends and talking about them and sharing some stories. And what was bleeding into that was my story and sharing a bit more and sharing a bit more. And we like to keep, our episodes on this program specifically a little bit shorter. So it was like, man, you can't be telling all these long-winded stories. So it actually became another show that we call Get Better Together. And it's exactly
nice.
that. It's digging up the dirt, it's whacking the bushes out of the way and going, no, this is the story that made me. This is how I am the man that I am. My green pasture was prison time. I did over 2 years in jail and prison cells, and working on myself and reading the Bible for the first time. I wasn't raised a religious person, but I felt the hand of God regardless. And even in putting me into the prison so that I could just stop and I could heal myself, and I could begin to walk the path that I'm on now. And that's not to say that that's been a straight path, right? It is straightened out here very recently, but even after, I was released from prison in 2018. God blessed me with a beautiful woman that's helping me raise my three beautiful children. None of these things are possible without the hand of God over me, blessing this path. And for me, I mean, it's hard to tie it all to one thing, but really, stopping a relationship with alcohol last October, I had really slowed down a lot already, but finally, in October, it was like I'm done. I don't need this. What's the one beer doing for me anyway? Like I don't need this at all. And then all of a sudden, there was a massive acceleration in the process. A year ago, I wasn't even a podcaster. Now we're running a network and we're cranking out daily content on 4 different shows, and we're doing all these things and building new podcasts and bringing out all of these stories. God's put me here to pull on this thread. I'm just going to keep on pulling until it's revealed. I've made it a mission of the podcast and what we're doing to develop more podcasters, 1 million podcasters. If we can get 1 million people turned on to this and they're going to go have 1 million conversations a day,
Right.
well, buddy, we're going to heal this world real quick. There's 8 billion people on this earth that all have a story. It's going to be my impetus to learn Mandarin, to perfect my Spanish. I spent a year in Mexico. Talk about being humbled. I went from being a drug dealer and having all the monopoly money in the world, to do anything I wanted, to living in the third world side, right, of Mexico, in a very rural area, and playing my guitar on the street for pesos, man. You talk about, counting $20,000 in cash to counting 200 pesos for your day's work. God humbled me first before I was ready to even walk the walk of prison, to sit still and to start listening. And now I've been given this incredible gift to connect. I've always been a networker. I've always been able to connect with people. And because of my life before, I can relate. Especially to someone like you whose story could have been this, right? So parallel with mine, and almost a carbon copy in some ways. And to connect with you is to connect with God. And I think that
That's
was
yeah.
always the teachings of Christ. That was always those teachings, that it is within you. All of this power to remake yourself every day is within you, and being given those teachings. So while I'm still not an overly religious church-going person, I think a lot of that has been corrupted by man. I do believe there are good people there as well, but I think this is the direct line. Communing with one another on this level, and then sharing these very personal, intimate conversations with the world. I'm not thinking about an audience when I'm sitting here with Jeremy. I'm thinking about our relationship right here. And I think that's so important, and what a blessing that podcasting is on the whole. And yeah, I love that it brings me to people like you with an amazing story and an amazing mission of your own.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I walked away from religion in 2017. I have a very weird relationship with the church. Um, on the I don't even know where to start with. You know what? I don't even need. I think everybody relates with that statement. I don't need to get into anything on that. But you had said something about people wanting. You said you were identifying with my story in a very parallel way. It's like our, no, none of us have a straight path. It veers right and left and up and down all the time in every other direction. But I do believe that the gift that God gave us as human beings, and one of the core reasons that we even exist, is to be able to experience pain, to identify with the emotions that it takes to actually live a life and live an abundant life. We would not know the great joys if we didn't know great pain. And there's a truth to that in a way that I believe that is where I think we are all in common. I do not believe that would have had to go to prison to understand what your heart was going through as you were removed from certain portions of your life that brought you to that moment with God. I believe other people can experience that pain manifested in a very different way, but the pain in and of itself is how we identify and how we relate. It's all that consciousness, coming together and understanding that I've been there too. One of the songs I just released is called Hear Me. And one of the lines in it is about that. It says, "So I'll say it again. I'm not scared of the shape that you're in. We're all circles and stars trapped behind bars, dying inside to be told, child, behold who you are." Like, it's just, we're all walking this same path of pain and joy and pleasure and trying to figure out the best way to make it manageable, even if we have to smooth out some of the chaotic parts of our life. And not, because don't get me wrong, I've been there out partying and stuff, and those nights you're like, yeah, it's like over the moon. Sometimes it's great pleasure, it's great fun, but at the next day there's just not that. And if you do that enough times, you're going to either enter the world of hypnosis where you're hypnotized by that pain so much to where you don't even care about anything else, or you're going to wake up and go, man, that ain't worth it. It's just not worth going out and partying all night. you know I don't have a problem having a drink. I don't have a problem with alcohol, though. I know plenty of people that have a problem with alcohol that, you know I don't drink in front of. That's just my own choice. I don't, because I'm trying to be kind to that person. I don't want to do this in front of you if it's going to really make you struggle. I smoke weed. Plant medicine has healed my body. I have pushed my body to the limits. I'm an adrenaline junkie, and so I've pushed my body to the limits my whole life. And so my own addiction journey was, my back surgery is basically the result of generations of my family that have had bad backs. My dad and his four brothers and sisters all had the same exact back surgery in the same location for the same thing that I had to have. Well, when I got word that I was going to have back surgery, I was like, well, then I want to have it now, because by then I had already been through this weird pain management cycle that we were presented with as we were, young adults. It's like, these are called opiates. Try these. You won't have to worry about a thing. And so it's like, I got that from an elder at the church that I worked for at the time. He was like, yeah, you need to try this thing because, I can see you're uncomfortable on stage. And so I'm like, well, okay. I had always been against pills my whole life, but I tried it. Well, it did not take long for me to understand, oh gosh, I can just take this and not have to worry about anything. So for about 2 years, man, by the end of that journey, I was on 150 pain pills. I was on 500 pills a month, 150 of which were pain pills. And I was in this cycle of just misery and depression. And so I came out of that and I was like, listen, I want this surgery now. I don't want to deal with this pain management stuff. I want the surgery now. So for 6 months, I got off of my pain medicine, with the exception of like 30 a month just to get me to my back surgery. Had my back surgery, took the management till that I think is 6 weeks, and I haven't looked back. I've never looked back, and it's been a wonderful journey since then. And for me, that's a very real part of my story that I now, because I'm on the other side of it, and because God is the only reason I made it through all of that, I can use that light that I had tucked under a bush for so long because I didn't want anybody knowing that Pastor Jeremy had a back problem. I was able to now pull it out and be like, listen, brothers and sisters, I've been there with you. It's a slippery slope, but there's ways around that you can still manage it all. So for me, I went plant medicine with all of my medicines, and so now, I don't have a problem with using marijuana in the same way that my ancestors did for their own healing ceremonies. And it's not like I'm doing it all the time, but yes, I do it to manage my pain in the same way I use other plant medicines that you can get on Amazon. So it's a choice that I made to step outside of a whole world that I don't agree with. So
Right. Yeah. That whole pharmaceutical
yeah,
pill popping, here's your cure, that none of it is holistic, right? It's all very
right.
linear based. Oh, that pill didn't solve all of the problems. Well, here's another
So
pill
let's
to
skip a
fix
note.
that
Yeah,
one. And
no, I
yeah, man, that's
no,
crazy. Till you're on 500 pills a month. That's insane. That's
exactly.
like, and that's the status quo, right? And I think
Right.
that consciously we're breaking that, right? Where we're going as a nation seems to be pulling away from that, and I couldn't be more thankful, right? Without
Well, we
getting
look at it.
overly
What if,
political about it, but I'm glad that we're moving in a different direction now spiritually. It feels like as a nation that we are very aware of what we've all been through. I'm 38. I've seen a lot of you know what I mean? Like, but there's
yeah,
been a lot of stuff that's happened just in the last 2 decades as an adult where it's just like, man, this world is weird. And I've been through a lot of it, and I've been through a lot of it as a very poor person, right? As someone who's experienced all of these things and in different countries, even to see how it is different, to see how much happier people were with nothing in Mexico was very eye-opening to me, right? I
yeah,
mean, the I was making, I mean, the wages I was making was the same that people were making, to work construction, right? 200 pesos a day is like 20 bucks, $10. You know what I mean? Like I went from counting 10 grand a week to counting my, $10 in pesos for my day. And we survived off of that. And it's like, oh, so life doesn't have to be so expensive. Like, what is this thing that I'm in, right? What is this organism that is the economic system? And like, what are these things? And that really began a journey, right? The eyes kind of peeled back at that. Then being in the prison system and seeing that for what it was as well, where it's just a rotating door, especially where I was, where these guys would get out, they wouldn't get treatment for the addictions or I mean, some of these people needed severe therapy. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of guys in there that they're just bad people, right? But a lot of people were just hurt individuals who made really bad choices, right? And a lot of them were in there for drugs and for different things. And it was just an eye-opening experience to how much pain, especially men, especially men around my age, were carrying with no real outlet or an ability to just get out there, right? And to get that pain out of you and to be able to examine it and go, oh, I don't need to carry this anymore. I can leave that and examine it fully and then walk away from it. And yes, it's a part of my story. I'm not trying to hide it, but I don't need to carry it in my backpack with me everywhere that I go. And that's what a lot of my trauma and things were. And really, this is an awakening for me just in the last few months, right? I committed to just, I don't care. I'm putting it on tape. I don't care who's affected by it. If you're affected by it because it personally affected, well, you probably gave me that story, right? I have a lot of trauma from my early childhood or teen years with my father, and I had held all that in. People love my dad around me. He's been a part of my band, and I'm realizing why some of these things never happened for me when we were trying to work together is because I never examined and put it all out there for everyone to see. Like, no, this is why I get so angry. This is why I've been carrying on to this thing for 2 decades, right? And now that I've had an opportunity with my own programs and being a guest on other people's programs to fully examine that and be able to breathe, to be able to look at it as not a part of myself, but as something finally that happened to me. I can look at it, I can address it, and then I can just leave it be. And whether that tape ever sees the light of day for anyone else is kind of
yep,
irrelevant. I've gotten it
yep,
out of me. So now we're trying to teach other people like, hey, just just let's start talking. Let's start talking
Well,
about it.
that's what this is for me. It's like I'm a live performer. Like that's my day job is I'm a traveling storyteller and singer. And so I'm in front of people. Well, like I said, I was in a cave for about a year and a half. So I'm this is a process for me. I stepped off the road playing music to raise my kids, took 10 years off, and prayed to God that I would be able to come back and do it again. Well, my children are all grown, functioning, and doing amazing. So it's time for dad to play again. My son he graduated high school last year, graduated the fire academy this year, and is a full-time firefighter, EMT. And so now it's time for me to get back out. And so part of the way that I'm doing that is I'm anybody and everybody, especially podcasters, man. I want to learn how to talk again. I was an autistic man trying to go through my own therapies and, in a room by myself, only reporting to my therapist at one time. So um, I'm learning to communicate again. I come from many different worlds and different backgrounds. As a musician, I've had to have other secondary jobs, which have taken me through the banking industry, the construction industry, the factories. And every position that I've had, I've always risen quickly in my role. So it was like I learned a lot very quickly. With the exception of my last job, but I didn't really want that. I was at my last job to figure out what I'm doing now. So and now I'm doing what I'm doing. So, but all of these things are beautiful ways to be able to relate to other people's stories. For me, there's two major contributors to why I believe that I do what I do. Number one is I was a pastor for a long time, and I'm hearing the most disturbing stories and pain that you can hear from another human being at their lowest moments. That was part of my role towards humanity, was to be there for people in those moments. Well, then what ended up happening when I left the church, when I left religion, I ended up getting a job as a first responder, as an EMT. And so I became a medic. And so being able to live 2 years, every single shift, tangibly working on the experiences that I had prayed for decades, maybe not the same characters, but the same situations. I'm literally there holding the man that just shot himself in the head, holding his head together in the same way that I was praying, 10 years earlier for this family that had just lost their son of the same age. It was a very, very healing time in my life. And I thank God for all the pain that I had to experience. I was the medic that responded to one of my daughter's best friends getting shot, and I was the last eyes she saw. So there's just some very real connections that not just as a pastor or as an EMT, but specifically for Jeremy Zeller, that I needed to walk through so that I could come out on the other side and realize that it was all for something. It was all for my purpose. God allowed me to live through my own story and experience what I did because nobody else is made for it like I am. There's nobody else that could, not say that I had it worse, but I'm saying that I believe in the same way with you, that your soul was put into that flesh suit to walk the journey that you're walking in a way that only you're meant to understand. I'm not. I'm there to support, encourage, see you, love you, and root you on the best you can and walk right, like you said, along those parallel paths, living life, and helping each other find those lampposts and create them while you're doing it. The story of God is never ending, which is personally, I read all the spiritual teachings. I love them all. The more, the merrier for me. Because of my own background, the language that I understand most clearly is the Christian Bible, the Holy Bible. So most of my teaching as a child and a young man was from that book. I still read it nearly every day. I read it something every day, but this is one that I always rely on. But it's because for Jeremy, I understand what it means for me. I am not one that thinks that every word in that book is literal. There you go. I don't think that everything in there is literal, right? I think that book is the most beautiful. It's the same as the Mahabharata that the Hindus use. You know, it's a beautiful, it's an epic tale. It's an epic tale of humanity that my story is woven in and out of it from the very first word to the very last. If I stop and I read in the fullness of what it means to me, I can dissect my own life and find healing in ways that were only meant for me to understand. And I can use those moments of healing to inspire it in other people by just sharing the how. You know, we all know the why. It's because we want to have purpose. We want to be seen. We want to be loved. We want to be heard. How do we do it? We do it together. We do it by letting somebody bring their authentic shit to you, put it right down in front of you, and you're not going to judge them for it. You're going to say, "Oh my gosh, you should have seen the shit I had this morning." You know, we all do it. It's just you got to see people for their authentic self and not judge them for things about them that you have no idea. You have no idea the indicators that were in place that made this person or that person do what they did. You don't know the lineage of family and karmic background that they had to deal with to be even born into this world, let alone judge who they are and why they did what they did. Now, that's not to say there's not consequences, but my gosh, that's what consequences are for. Yeah, you got to deal with the consequences, but that consequence doesn't define you. That consequence is there as a barrier to prevent you. Now, it's how you deal with it is up to you. But I think we all need to be doing what you and I are doing, which is just sharing our story. You know, I want to talk to people because I need to talk to people for my professional day job. You know, in the process, I also have a podcast. I haven't done it for a while, but I had to stop because my live music is going very well. So picking and choosing my battles. And look, I posted that there the other day because I was like, you know what? Why am I even? Because I was stressing. I was like, man, I haven't done a podcast episode in a while. And I'm sitting here going, why are you even stressing about it? You got a billion people out there with podcasts that are looking for guests. And if you're just trying to learn how to talk again, then just go on their podcast. And I was like, thank you, God. That's such a beautiful idea. That means I don't have to edit anything. I just show up and talk, baby. I'm like, I am in on that ride. So that's where that post that I made came from. It was like this moment of desperation where I was like, I don't have the time to do my own podcast. So yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, man.
Yeah, well, and since we're talking, why don't you go ahead and plug everything, and we'll talk a little bit off camera before I let you go as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just I would say look me up online on all the socials and everything. Jeremy Zeller and the other side. Um, YouTube is typically where I drop my content, like my creative content anyway. You know, I'll post on Instagram or Facebook and stuff like that every once in a while. I try to keep people, you know, up to date where my shows are and, you know, show posters and pictures and all that stuff. But yeah, I'm just now kind of getting this thing. It's finally ready to take out on the road and kind of get the website tweaked. I still don't even have my website tweaked the way that I need it to. But I've also just turned a lot of that over to my lady. So I'm hoping that, you know, she is way better at that social media stuff than I am. So Jeremy Zeller on social media. I'm on Spotify, iTunes, all those streaming stuff. I try to drop a couple songs a year at least. Um, I'm looking to try to drop a song a month, but you know, I got to have the creative team behind me to do that. So yeah, look me up. Fine, come to a show sometime. If you're in the autism world in Kentucky, I am a autism awareness advocate and would love to meet you at a show sometime. So
Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for being part of the scene.
thank you. I appreciate it.